You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Hardening computing resources is the practice of strengthening servers, endpoints, and platforms so that they resist misuse and attacks. At its core, this means removing unnecessary elements, applying stricter settings, and ensuring only what is needed remains active. When you think of a computer system, every open port, unused account, or default setting is like an unlocked door in a building. Hardening closes those doors while keeping legitimate business activity functional. It transforms a general-purpose machine into a purpose-driven asset that is safer by design, giving defenders fewer variables to manage and adversaries fewer opportunities to exploit. The importance of hardening becomes clear when you consider how systems are typically deployed. Vendors create software to serve the widest possible market, so default configurations emphasize convenience and compatibility. Unfortunately, this also means many unnecessary features, tools, or access paths are enabled by default. Without hardening, those defaults remain open, waiting to be discovered by someone with malicious intent. By reducing what is active to only the essentials, security becomes proactive. The system's attack surface shrinks, and even if vulnerabilities exist, the number of ways to reach them diminishes sharply. An effective hardening strategy begins with a comprehensive inventory. You cannot secure what you cannot see, and blind spots are common in environments that grow rapidly or change frequently. Inventory involves cataloging every server, workstation, and connected platform in the environment. Once identified, each asset must be classified by its function and sensitivity. A machine hosting public information may need different controls than a system storing medical data. This classification allows security teams to apply the right level of hardening to the right place, ensuring resources are not wasted on low-risk systems while high-value systems get maximum protection. Consider a simple example of inventory and classification in practice. An organization discovers it has 50 servers, but only 5 of them host critical databases. By classifying those 5 as high sensitivity, the security team can prioritize stronger controls, such as multi-factor administrative access, more frequent patching, and tighter monitoring. The remaining servers, while still secured, may not require the same depth of measures. This targeted approach ensures hardening is not applied in a one-size-fits-all fashion, but instead aligns with the actual importance and risk of each system in the environment. After inventory and classification, the next major step is to minimize operating system installations. A minimal install means loading only the essential components needed for the system's purpose, leaving out optional tools and features. When fewer packages are installed, there are fewer potential vulnerabilities and fewer things to manage over time. Removing unneeded services further reduces the chance of misuse. For instance, if a server is never meant to send email, it should not run mail services in the background. This principle echoes the broader security mantra of least privilege, but applied to system functionality itself. A good way to understand minimal installation is to imagine building a workshop. If you only plan to cut wood, stocking the room with welding equipment, paint supplies, and fragile tools not only clutters the space, but also increases hazards. The same applies to computing resources. Installing only what is necessary keeps the system lean, reduces the attack surface, and simplifies ongoing maintenance. Administrators spend less time patching unused software, attackers encounter fewer opportunities to exploit, and performance often improves as a side effect. Minimalism in computing translates to both security and efficiency gains. User accounts and credentials are another critical area for hardening. Default accounts, such as admin or guest, often exist in new systems and are well known to attackers. Disabling these accounts removes a predictable entry point. Similarly, removing or tightly restricting local administrator rights reduces the chance that a compromised account could lead to total system control. Strong credential policies, unique passwords, complexity standards, and multi-factor authentication further strengthen the environment. Each account should be tied to an actual individual or service, making accountability clear and preventing orphaned accounts from lingering unnoticed. Neglecting credential practices often leads to some of the most damaging breaches. Consider a situation where an attacker compromises a single user account. If that account has unnecessary administrative privileges, the attacker can quickly escalate control across the system. By enforcing least privilege and removing local admin rights where possible, you contain the potential damage. Even if an account is compromised, its limited scope minimizes what an attacker can achieve. This principle reflects a recurring theme in hardening. Accept that compromise attempts will occur, but configure systems so that success is difficult and impact is limited. Patch management is another cornerstone of hardening. Software will inevitably have flaws, and vendors issue patches to correct them. However, applying patches blindly can create outages or compatibility problems. That is why organizations adopt patching cadences and staged deployments. A cadence sets the rhythm weekly, monthly, or quarterly, depending on the criticality of systems. Staged deployments mean testing patches in a controlled environment before rolling them out broadly. This careful balance ensures systems stay up to date without risking unexpected failures. Patching is a cycle, not a one-time task, and must be embedded into ongoing operations. A good analogy for patching is updating a city's traffic signals. If you make changes all at once without testing, you may cause accidents or traffic jams. But if you roll them out gradually, starting in a smaller neighborhood, observing the impact, and then expanding, you maintain order while improving the system. In computing, staged patching achieves the same stability. It allows administrators to identify potential issues early while still moving toward a more secure state. Without this discipline, unpatched vulnerabilities accumulate, leaving hardened configurations full of cracks that attackers can exploit. File system permissions and secure directory structures provide another layer of defense. Not every user or process should have access to every file. By setting precise permissions, organizations ensure that sensitive directories are accessible only to those who truly need them. This prevents accidental changes, malicious tampering, and data leakage. For example, system configuration files should not be writable by general users. Application logs should not expose sensitive details to all staff. By designing a secure directory structure, access becomes predictable, organized, and aligned with security goals rather than left to chance. The consequences of neglecting permissions are easy to see. Imagine a shared office where every employee has a key to every cabinet. While convenient, it only takes one careless action or malicious insider to compromise critical records. Instead, cabinets holding sensitive documents are usually restricted to specific roles. The same philosophy applies to computing resources. File system permissions act as a control that quietly enforces order in the background, reducing the risk of accidental or deliberate misuse. Hardening succeeds not only by blocking external attackers, but also by minimizing the harm that can arise from inside the organization. Host-based firewalls and network port minimization extend this principle outward to the network layer. A host-based firewall enforces which types of traffic a machine will accept or reject, while closing unused ports ensures attackers have fewer potential entry points. If a server only needs to receive web traffic on port 443, there is no reason to leave other ports exposed. By trimming network access down to essentials, organizations create a machine that communicates only as intended, resisting the background noise of constant internet probing. This transforms each resource into a far less appealing target for opportunistic attackers. Think of network port minimization as silencing unnecessary doorbells on a house. If every door and window has a bell, intruders will know where to knock. By limiting communication to a single strong entrance, you reduce attention and simplify monitoring. Administrators can focus on securing the few required pathways rather than juggling dozens of potential risks. Host-based firewalls further enhance this by applying rules that follow the system wherever it operates. even in environments beyond the organization's perimeter. Hardening is not only about what runs on a machine, but also about what the machine allows in and out. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Service account hygiene is an often overlooked component of hardening, but one that can quietly determine whether a compromise remains contained or escalates into a full-scale breach. Service accounts are special identities used by applications or background processes, not people, and they frequently run with broad privileges for convenience. Good hygiene means granting these accounts only the permissions necessary to perform their intended functions, rotating their credentials regularly, and storing those credentials in a vault rather than hard-coding them into scripts. By managing service accounts with the same rigor as human accounts, organizations prevent attackers from exploiting forgotten or overly privileged identities. Consider a scenario where a web application uses a service account to connect to a database. If the account is configured with administrator rights, an attacker who compromises the application suddenly controls the entire database infrastructure. By contrast, if the account only has read access to specific tables, the damage is far more limited. Regular rotation of service account credentials further reduces risk, since stolen credentials quickly expire. Vaulting adds yet another barrier, ensuring credentials are not exposed in plain text on a file system or within a code repository where attackers often look first. Secure remote management practices form another key aspect of hardening. Administrators often need to connect remotely to perform maintenance, yet those same connections are highly attractive targets for attackers. Bastion hosts, also called jump boxes, provide a controlled gateway where administrators authenticate before reaching sensitive systems. This isolates critical servers from direct internet exposure. Coupled with session recording, these practices not only improve security, but also create accountability, since every administrative action is captured. Hardening remote access is about balance, enabling legitimate work while limiting attack opportunities to the narrowest path possible. To illustrate, imagine a museum with valuable artifacts. Instead of giving staff direct access through every window, the museum routes all entry through a single guarded door with cameras recording each visitor. A Bastion host works in much the same way, funneling all administrative access through a monitored checkpoint. Even if an attacker manages to reach the Bastion, the heightened scrutiny makes it far harder to remain undetected. This layered control reflects the broader hardening philosophy: restrict what is allowed, observe closely what remains, and make unauthorized activity difficult to hide. Disk encryption adds another layer of defense by protecting data at rest. Even if an attacker steals a physical drive or a lost laptop falls into the wrong hands, encryption ensures the data cannot be read without the proper key. Deployment options vary from full disk encryption to selective encryption of certain volumes, but the principle remains the same. Data should be unintelligible without authorization. Key management becomes the central challenge here, since a lost or stolen encryption key undermines the entire protection. Secure key storage, rotation policies, and recovery procedures are therefore inseparable from encryption itself. A useful way to think about encryption is to picture a safe. Placing documents inside a locked safe makes them inaccessible to anyone who does not hold the combination. Similarly, disk encryption locks digital data so that possession of the hardware alone is not enough to gain access. Without effective key management, though, it is like leaving the combination written on a sticky note taped to the safe. Hardening through encryption is powerful, but only when paired with disciplined handling of the keys that unlock it. Otherwise, the control provides only the illusion of security. Container host hardening is increasingly important as organizations adopt cloud-native architectures. Containers are lightweight and efficient, but they can introduce risk if the underlying host is not secured. Hardening here means starting with minimal base images that contain only what is strictly necessary, limiting runtime privileges, and applying restrictions that prevent containers from interfering with each other or the host. Just as with traditional servers, unnecessary services should be stripped away, and monitoring must be in place to detect unusual behavior. Containers promise agility, but without hardening, they can also amplify vulnerabilities across many workloads at once. Imagine a shipping yard where each container should carry only its designated goods. If containers are overstuffed with unrelated items or left open for easy access, the yard quickly becomes chaotic and vulnerable to theft. In computing, bloated or poorly secured container images present the same danger. Lean, minimal images act like sealed, labeled crates, transparent in purpose and harder to tamper with. Runtime restrictions add the equivalent of guards and fences, ensuring each container remains within its intended boundaries. The hardening principles do not change with new technology, they simply adapt to new formats. Another important hardening step involves disabling or restricting scripting engines and macro capabilities where they are unnecessary. Many attackers exploit scripting languages such as PowerShell or Visual Basic macros embedded in Office documents to deliver malware. By default, these features are often enabled to maximize flexibility, but if they are not actively required, disabling them removes a popular avenue for compromise. Where they must remain, applying restrictions, logging, and user training ensures that their use does not become an unchecked gateway into the system. Hardening means recognizing which conveniences come at too high a cost. Think of scripting engines like high-powered tools in a workshop. For a trained craftsman, they are essential and efficient, but in the wrong hands, they can cause significant damage. If a workshop does not need a chainsaw, there is no reason to leave one lying around. Likewise, most Office users never need to run complex macros, so leaving that capability active only provides attackers with another opportunity. Disabling or tightly restricting these features keeps the environment safe by aligning system capabilities with actual business requirements rather than hypothetical flexibility. Supply chain security also forms part of hardening. Systems are only as strong as the software they run, and attackers increasingly target the supply chain by tampering with packages before they reach the organization. Hardening in this area involves verifying that all software comes from trusted, signed sources and that checksums or digital signatures are validated before installation. Even seemingly routine updates should not bypass this process. Just as you would not accept a sealed package without verifying its sender, systems should not accept software without cryptographic proof of authenticity. When organizations neglect supply chain validation, they risk importing malware disguised as legitimate updates. The infamous case of software supply chain attacks shows how a single compromised package can spread undetected to thousands of organizations. By implementing strict rules around signed packages and verified sources, hardening ensures that what enters the environment is truly what the vendor intended. Checksums function like tamper-evident seals, warning administrators if something has been altered along the way. In this sense, software handling becomes another extension of system hygiene, aligned with the same principles of trust, verification, and minimal exposure. Monitoring for configuration drift is another aspect of keeping resources hardened over time. Drift occurs when systems gradually move away from their intended secure state, often due to updates, manual changes, or overlooked exceptions. Automated tools can detect when settings deviate from the baseline, triggering alerts or even rolling back to the approved configuration. Without this vigilance, systems that were once hardened slowly erode into vulnerable states. Hardening is not a single event but a continuous discipline that requires reinforcement through monitoring and corrective action. Staging and pre-production validation of hardening tools provide additional assurance. Rolling out new scripts or configuration changes directly into production carries risk, as errors could cause outages. By first testing in a staging environment that mirrors production, administrators can observe the impact, confirm compatibility, and ensure controls behave as expected. This step reflects the same philosophy as staged patching: better to catch mistakes in a safe setting than to disrupt critical services. Hardening succeeds not only when it prevents attacks, but also when it does so without undermining availability or reliability. Documentation of hardened states completes the cycle. Recording what settings are in place, why they were chosen, and how they were applied provides both operational guidance and audit evidence. It ensures that when new staff members join or systems are rebuilt, the hardening process can be reproduced consistently. These documents also support compliance obligations by showing that security practices are deliberate, not ad hoc. Hardening is strengthened when it is transparent, repeatable, and tied to clear records, rather than relying on tribal knowledge or undocumented habits. Metrics then provide a way to measure effectiveness. By tracking compliance rates, residual vulnerabilities, and the number of rollback incidents, organizations can see whether their hardening efforts are working in practice. Metrics transform abstract processes into tangible evidence of progress, allowing leaders to allocate resources intelligently and demonstrate value. Without measurement, hardening remains a set of tasks with unclear impact. With it, security becomes a managed process, subject to continuous improvement and adjustment based on observed outcomes rather than guesswork. Finally, training ensures operations teams maintain hardened configurations over time. Even the most carefully designed settings will fail if staff inadvertently weaken them during routine tasks. Teaching administrators the importance of least privilege, careful patching, and disciplined use of automation reinforces the hardened state as the expected norm. Hardening is not a one-time project, but a culture, built into how teams approach every change. Combined with automation, it yields repeatable, auditable protection that evolves with the environment. This is how organizations move from reactive defenses to resilient, sustainable security. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.